Welcome to the Silicon Slopes Show. It is Tuesday. Today's show is brought to you by Black Desert. Black Desert is, let me tell you what Black Desert is. I thought I had it pulled up, but I don't. Here it is committed to one thing above all, fostering an endlessly fun and fascinating resort community without any pretense that puts the remarkable within reach. Home to a PGA FedEx Cup and LPGA event. I think that's one of the first times that's ever happened in Utah.
Correct.
Black Desert offers world-class golf, hospitality, dining, shopping, and recreating in a stunning 600-acre canvas in the heart of Greater Zion in southern Utah. More info at blackdesertevents.com. Very cool place. We have some incredible places in Utah, actually. Have you guys heard about... By the way, Jonathan Johnson's here. The great Jonathan Johnson. How are you, my friend?
I'm well. How you doing, man?
Have you guys heard about this 3 bridges development they're doing in Salem that's going to be something like this Black Desert thing?
I have not.
It's crazy.
The only thing I ever hear about is like the toxic nuclear waste dumps and the nonstop locusts.
Yeah.
It's not good.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to come to Utah.
Well, Jonathan Johnson is a legend. I don't even know that you need an intro.
No, you're kind.
You are in a Silicon Slopes Hall of Famer. Even.
Thank you. Yes, thanks.
And just an incredible leader who I've known and Silicon Slopes has known for a very long time. You've always been a big supporter of ours. We should probably first address this tragedy that happened in Baltimore.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys have seen this now, and a lot of people have.
It's remarkable, just to see a bridge that big and substantial collapse, and the water's so cold. It's tragic.
It's unbelievable. So here's what the New York Times is saying. A massive cargo ship leaving the port of Baltimore lost power and issued a Mayday call shortly before striking a major bridge early Tuesday, giving officials a brief chance to stop cars and try to evacuate the span before it fell. So they had a brief chance to evacuate it? That's interesting. There's people. I think there's 6 people missing, at least.
You got to wonder, on a ship that big and significant, where's the backup power? They got one system to run that huge thing. It's just, when I think about all the things we do in life, particularly in business, there's generally a backup plan.
Have you seen the video?
I've just briefly seen it on social media.
It's fascinating because it loses power right when it, like at a perfect time, and veers left at a perfect time. Actually a really terrible time, but the perfect time to bring down the bridge. What do you think of that? I mean, there are already obviously speculations that it might have been a terrorist attack. It might not have been an accident. What do we know at this early in the game? But it is like kind of odd that the power went off right then.
Yeah. As I was listening to the radio on the way down, they were trying to rule out terrorist attacks, and I think that's kind of the initial response. But it feels like the imperfect, perfect storm. It's just, and the question is, how does that happen on a big commercial ship like that? How's there just one power source that you can't do something? If something happens, you usually flip a switch and on goes the generator, or something.
It's crazy.
Massive.
And it's not like it didn't know it was going underneath a bridge. Right?
Yeah.
It's pretty... This is a fascinating story, and I think... I don't know how you guys feel, but it feels like this is going to be a crazy year. And I don't know that this is part of that or this isn't part of that. But what a crazy year. Already a crazy week. Already a crazy Monday. Trump gets his thing less. Is now worth a ton of money through Truth Social.
For now.
For now, of course, that's all paper.
I mean, having been executive at 2 publicly traded companies, the markets are fickle if you don't have revenue, you don't have profits. It's interesting to see IPOs and stocks come out and boom. This feels to me like it has the real potential to be a meme stock.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Have we ever had a situation where people might be investing because of the man and not the company?
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's that old investing adage, best bet the jockey, not the horse. You know, and I don't know that that's what's happening here. But there are a lot of people who, like the former president, who want to see him do well. You know, that probably have not looked at the balance sheet, P&L.
Oh, I guarantee it's terrible.
Of the company.
A social
right?
media company? Like, there's no way that's
well,
good.
yeah. And, you know, you look and see what it's lost and lost consistently. You know, and companies that lose money, they grow. Markets have rewarded them well in the past for a time. But ultimately, you know, if you're not making money, that's what you're there to do for shareholders.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Weston, I'm hearing the music in my ear a little bit still. Are you guys hearing it?
Leaning on this end.
It's quiet over here. I'm not sure what you got going on there.
Glenn's hearing voices.
I've got a different plug-in, I guess.
I would argue that even Elon Musk, people invest in him, not his companies. I think there's a lot of sci-fi and space enthusiasts that
I guess
invest
maybe
in
the
Tesla.
difference here, of course, like I invest all my money in anything Elon Musk is doing, right? I guess the difference here is Donald Trump is not running Truth Social, right? He just owns 60% of it. Like we're not expecting him to execute on that company. It's almost like if you want him to be president, you're investing in that company.
Yeah, and you know, he's clearly he clearly uses it, and that helps drive adoption and users. So, I mean, he is a factor in it. But at the end of the day, you know, you invest in company, you hope they make money, you hope they grow, you hope they're adding shareholder value. So, you know, we'll see. There are a lot of companies that go public and have an initial kind of euphoric boom.
Yeah.
And then, you know, when quarterly results come out, and that's what being a public company is, it's quarter after quarter after quarter, reporting on how you do and telling a story and, you know, making sure you're hoping that the investors like the story. Usually it's easier to like if there's top line growth and bottom line growth. But, you know, sometimes investors they're happy enough with just top line. We'll see where this goes. But look, you know, Trump's got a very, very loyal following, and he's got a very, very kind of loyal group of haters.
Yeah.
For sure.
Have we ever seen a politician like him, Jonathan?
I don't think so. I mean, look, I'm not a long political science guy, but not in my lifetime. I mean, he's certainly not in the States that I can remember.
Yeah.
The only person I can think of who might have had like the charismatic, great, intense following, and also the intense hatred might be Reagan. Could he have been? But he wasn't obviously as polarizing.
But he was a communicator. I mean, he put sentences together. He told stories for me, in an inspiring way. And there was a cogency, and there was a doctrine. And there was, you know, what was he focused on? It was, you know, the evil empire of the Soviet Union and helping bring it down. It was less government regulation. I mean, he was consistent, at least in my mind, in the message he did. And, you know, his nickname, the Great Communicator, he was really good at it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he was incredible at it. It seems like we maybe weren't as divided then.
Well, certainly not. I mean, it's probably hasn't, I don't think it's happened since then that whole entire election maps were one color. When he won in 1980, I think all but one or two states voted for him. I mean, the Reagan Revolution, that's a term, was really a revolution. It changed, it kind of changed. Lots of people who had been historical Democrats became Republicans. I think Trump has brought a shift. I think a lot of people who were Republicans have shifted to independent or become more aligned with the Democrats. And a lot of people that were historically Democrats have aligned with the Republican Party that Trump has created. So, I mean, things have changed, but I don't think it's been with kind of the mandates that Reagan brought. And, you know, my big concern when I look at, you mentioned you think it's going to be a tumultuous year. My big concern is no matter who wins the presidential election this year, I think they will have less than a majority of the popular vote.
Yeah.
I think with third-party candidates, plural, that, whoever wins will probably, win the electoral college vote with a majority there, but they won't have the mandate of 55, 60%.
Sure.
They'll probably win with 45%. 45% of the popular vote, and then we'll probably have a divided Congress.
Yeah.
Senate and the House could be different. So to have a divided Congress and a president will be a lame duck because either one would be in their last term without a mandate from the popular vote, that just feels like it's a breeding ground for more partisan divisiveness.
Yeah. Clinton,
I hate to say that.
Clinton only got like 42, 43, right? Because Ross Perot did so well. And I don't think he ever got over 50 actually in the 90s.
Yeah, I don't recall, but I don't think we were as divided then.
No.
And I just think it's going to be horrible.
Yeah. What do you think of RFK? By the way, there's some news around RFK. He's going to name
his VP today.
He's going to name a VP, and it's Nicole Shanahan, who was
you're ahead of me.
The ex-wife of Google founder Sergey Brin. I don't know, my mouse isn't working. She's a Bay Area lawyer and political novice, previously married to Google founder Sergey Brin. Some rumors and controversy with Elon Musk.
Yep.
Potentially broke up that marriage, but they both deny it. So let's just move on from that. But obviously Elon's got to be involved.
Sure.
In some way.
He's in.
He's a newsmaker, always.
I don't know what you think about this, Jonathan, but I don't think he has a big chance, but I think RFK is the most legit third-party candidate we've had since Perot.
Oh, for sure. I think who's been out there since Perot? We had Pat Buchanan. We've had, some Green Party, Nader.
Nader.
Nader pulled some.
That Jill lady that everybody always blames.
Jill Stein.
Yeah, Jill Stein.
But no, I think RFK, look, he's a Kennedy with initials.
Yeah.
Right? He has a brand, that's for sure. I don't think he has a chance to win a state.
You don't think so?
I think I don't know. I'd be surprised. I don't think so.
Right now you've got the national polls seem to be like sometimes Biden's up by 1, sometimes Trump's up by 1. It's pretty close. But you look at these swing states and Trump is dominating.
It's going to come down to 7 or so states is what everyone's saying.
And he's leading in all of those by like a lot, according to Real Clear Politics, which is kind of fascinating.
Ohio.
Yeah,
Ohio's done.
Ohio's become a red state.
Ohio and Florida used to be the swing states. They're both red now. It's Pennsylvania, it's Michigan, it's Wisconsin. It's those types of states that we've got.
Nevada, it's Arizona. We'll see some stuff around Utah. Our neighboring states there's interest.
Did Joe Biden win Arizona?
He did.
Oh, wow. That is shocking. I don't think that happens again.
That was the whole Maricopa County.
Yeah.
Oh, there's
controversies, but
he didn't actually win it.
No. I don't want to go there. Let's move on from that. Let's not be
double breaking news.
You actually said something interesting that I want to double click on, Jonathan, around the quarterly reports you have to do as a public company CEO and the fact that you have to tell this story every quarter. I wonder, for those who have never run a public company, which is most, what the pressure of that is like, what that means, like how does that change the way you run a business? There's a lot of people who talk about, as a public company CEO, I have to manage for the quarter. I can't think long term. I just wonder, like, what is that like?
Well, there is some reality to that statement, but hopefully the best companies aren't thinking that way. They're thinking what creates long-term shareholder value. And when they are having a quarter where long-term shareholder value creation may mean short-term hurdles, that they're communicating that well. But, if you listen to a lot of the investment bankers and the analysts, They're going to say, look, the trick to being a successful public company is beat quarterly guidance quarter after quarter after quarter. And there's a real pressure to do that, because when you don't, if you're not very clear in communicating why, the market is a fickle mistress.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard. And I like Buffett's statement about the market, that in the short term, it's a voting machine, but in the long term, it's a weighing machine. And so I think if you're building a quality company of substance, over time, the market will capture that. Day to day, with the, vicissitudes of what the markets are, maybe not. But look, as a public company CEO, people ask you about your stock price. Your employees ask about it. Your shareholders certainly ask about it. There's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it's a really interesting. What about the pressure leading up to the earnings call? What are is it like a week of prep? Is it 2 weeks of prep? What are you doing?
There's a lot of work that goes around that. There's, reviewing what you've said in the past. What did we say we were going to do? Did we do it? How do we show that we did it? What are we ready to say confidently that we're going to do in the future? Are we going to give guidance around revenue, around profits, around earnings per share? Or is it murky enough? And, I was a public company CEO during the pandemic and the post-pandemic, where trying to predict was really difficult and almost a fool's errand to say, here's what the next quarter looks like. And so there were a lot of times where we would say just that. We don't, this is a topsy-turvy time in the economy. Here's what we're shooting for, but we're not going to give any guidance. So, yeah, there's a lot of work that goes into it. There's a careful script that's usually put together. There's preparing for analyst and shareholder questions. What have they asked in the past? What are you going to do? And then following that earnings release, there's then a time where you're talking to analysts. You're probably going on the road and talking to shareholders some of the quarters of the year. There's a lot of time taken up, management time taken up in kind of public company messaging and reporting that doesn't happen in such a big way when you're privately held and you've got a few shareholders.
Yeah, you're just having board meetings, right? Yeah. And which is a thing in unto itself, but this is a different level. This is the big leagues. What have you learned about leadership in all of your career and roles that you've had? And even when you ran for governor, what did you learn about leadership in that experience and the various, you've done so many things, Jonathan. It's impressive.
Well, thanks. And I've done, I failed at so many things too. I think that's important too. And I think one of the things I learned from leadership is it's okay to fail, as long as you're going to learn from mistakes that you make and you're going to become better because of it. Leadership has a lot of qualities, but I think one of the primary qualities of a good leader is being an effective communicator. What's your vision? What's the why behind the decisions that you're trying to get people to sign up to commit to work really hard toward? And being honest and being open. And I think part of communication also means being a good listener, answering questions, creating psychological safety for people to ask hard questions. Because if leaders don't hear hard questions, they're probably got a blind spot, because those hard questions from the rank and file, the people on the front lines, where the rubber meets the road, whatever phrase you want to use, they see things that you don't see in the C-suite if you're not really looking for them hard.
Yeah. If you had a magic wand, would you take the quarterly to maybe once a year, twice a year? Because I like your answer, but it still is a pain in the butt, because you've got all these people that all they're worried about is the snarkiness of it, and they can short you and they can do all this stuff.
How is shorting legal, by the way?
Well, I have a long history answering that question. And, I think shorting, maybe if you've pre-borrowed the stock and you actually hold it and can sell it before you do, create some liquidity in the market. But if you can sell stock that you have not borrowed, and may not be able to borrow if there's a tightness in the market, that should never be legal.
It's such an odd thing to be able to short a company.
Yeah.
And by the way, you can short a company and publicly start writing articles and do a whole campaign around devaluing the company and hitting its reputation and all these various things.
Well, I think the SEC has a lot of disclosure requirements for long holders. If you own a certain percent, if you're above 5%, if you're above 10%, you're making certain filings, and people are going to be watching your trading and your public statements very carefully. You can be short a huge amount, and there's no public disclosure on that. And so there ought to be some reciprocal rule there that if you're short a certain amount, you've got to disclose your position, because the SEC is quick to look at pump and dump schemes by people who are long. They don't seem, in my mind, to be as quick to look at short and distort schemes, which is just the inverse.
Yeah.
The inverse, short and distort,
exactly.
and put it out. Garrett, to answer your question, what's the right frequency? I personally think quarterly's a little much, and I think annually is probably not enough. Maybe semi-annually. And then if there's something material in between, you have a duty right now to file the public company to file an 8K when there's any material event. And so the market can learn things in between reporting. Quarterly's just so frequent. It just feels like Groundhog's Day. You just finish it once and you're starting to prepare for it again.
Yeah, like running for Congress.
Heaven forbid.
I'm always interested when people live on both sides of the fence. You've run a public company and you're on the board of directors of J.M. Smucker, which is a public company. This might seem like a simplistic question, like a second grader would ask it, but I get asked this question a lot. What does the board of directors do for a company of that size and in that industry? And ultimately, how much time do you put towards it? What do you enjoy about it? What makes it fun and invigorating?
Yeah. I think the quick kind of legal answer is boards of directors have certain fiduciary duties they represent the shareholders. Ultimately, they hire and fire CEOs. I think there's a big thing missing in between those events that doesn't get said, but boards have to do. They hire support and fire CEOs. It's not just those 2 days happen so infrequently. The in-between days happen all the time. It's how can we help the CEO succeed? They're involved in capital allocation decisions. So if a company's going to pay a dividend to its shareholders, meaning it's got extra money and it's going to pay some out to the shareholders, the board will approve that. If there are big acquisitions that require significant financing or outlay capital, boards approve that. Last year, the Smucker Company acquired the Hostess Company for $5.5 billion. That was something the board was very well briefed on, approved, and do those kind of things. When Overstock last year acquired the bid in bankruptcy for the Bed Bath & Beyond brand, the Overstock board approved what we would pay and what we could bid up to. So it's making big, significant decisions. And then beyond that, it's making sure that there are processes in place that things don't go wrong. There's an audit committee to make sure that the numbers are reported correctly. There's a compensation committee to make sure that people are paid fairly, but not too much.
Yeah.
And there's a governance committee to make sure you're just following the rules, to be a board that's looking out for shareholders. Does that address the question,
Absolutely.
Garrett?
Thank you. Because you read a really good business book, right? Whether it's Barbarians of the Gate or Too Big to Fail, and you've got the board is always omnipresent. Well, we got to run it past the board, or the board's going to ruin this, or the board's going to fire me, the board's going to hire me. They have a big pivotal role, And then if you're kind of new to this, it's like, well, that person's the CEO of United Airlines. What are they doing talking about this company then? Like, they're really good at making decisions, right? They sit on 3 other boards, by the way. It's got to be an interesting meeting when you're with all of your board colleagues.
Look, I when I was the CEO of Overstock, I loved meeting with our board. They brought different perspectives from their different backgrounds. They brought different perspectives because they were out of the weeds, of the day-to-day running the business. It was useful, and those are the kind of things that I try and do when I sit on a board, whether it's a board of a public company like the Smucker Company or privately held core boards that I've sat on when Overstock was investing in different companies in its portfolio. And by the way, a private board actually has, I think, even more function. It's what can we do with our connections to help this startup get out of the nest and fly? Who do we know? Who can we connect you with? There, it feels a little bit more hands-on.
Yeah.
So it's, it depends on the board and the culture.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the current macroeconomic environment? I mean, obviously everybody's feeling inflation, but then we're also being told we've never had better jobs numbers. And we're in this really kind of interesting economic climate, particularly in tech even, right? Like where everybody's like, cut costs. AI can do a lot of the things that maybe previously employed. How do you feel about where we're at macroeconomically?
I think we're still in limbo. I think it's kind of a malaise right now. I think high interest rates are playing into that. So many people who bought homes and have mortgages in the 3s, 4s, 5s can't move. They're stuck in their homes. If they want to move, if they want to relocate, if they want a bigger home, if they want to do whatever, they're going to sign up for an 8% mortgage. And that's a significant stall on home sales, which is a stall on the economy. I mean, look, I used to run a company that was mostly home furnishings and furniture. And so mortgage rates made a difference. I read the employment numbers and I see what they are, but I also think employees are at a different kind of headspace than they've been in the past. There's, a real pushback when bosses say return to office.
Yeah.
There's a real pushback on that. That creates tension and frustration. There's this, are you being productive? It's always hard to measure. And I think there's a little bit, the pandemic kind of changed what people focused on. There's more to life than just working all the time. I'm in an in-between state right now. And I got to tell you, asked me how I was when I came into the studio, Clint. I said, I'm relaxed. I'm more relaxed than I've ever been.
That's so awesome.
And I love it. And I think there's a lot of people that are finding ways to relax and maybe not putting the 110% of their mind share to work that they were pre-pandemic. And I know there's no such thing as 110%, but you know what I'm saying. It's
where you're just all in.
We gave so much. And frankly, I don't think that's healthy. I think there has to be work-life balance. And, when I was at Overstock, our Irish office flipped that term. They said there has to be life-work balance.
Mm.
And I love to say it that way because I think that's the right order. If you say work-life, you've prioritized work over life. I think it's life-work balance that we're trying to prioritize.
What do you think about this idea? In fact, I was listening to or watching actually this new podcast that LeBron James and JJ Redick are doing, and it's all about basketball. And they actually talk about basketball. It's not like the weird debates that you see on the radio show. It's like 2 experts on the game.
There was Stephen A. Smith wasn't.
Nobody was screaming at anyone. They actually draw out plays. I mean, by the way, everybody should watch it. It's fascinating. But when you were saying that, it reminded me of something that LeBron said. He said, in order to be great, you've got to sacrifice loved ones. And I was like, whoa. And he's like, they got to know, I'm going to wake up, go to the gym, come back, take a nap, go back to the gym, eat dinner, go to sleep. That's what I'm doing today and for many days. for this whole year. What do you think about that? Because I hear what you're saying around like the balance and all that type of stuff, but probably the most unbalanced person I can think of in the entire world is Elon Musk. That guy seems like he's just constantly, he's literally sleeping on the floor of the Tesla factory. And, when he bought Twitter, he was staying there. And like, what do you think about like this dichotomy between, hey, get your life and your happiness and your mental health right? And also, if you want to do something great, is that compatible?
So I think you have to look at who's in your life and make sure your priorities are aligned. I mean, my wife Courtney and I have been married for 36 years.
She's a wonderful woman, by the way.
And well, thank you. I agree. I'm gonna agree with you on that every time. But there have been times where my life-work balance was way out of whack, but we would talk and counsel about it together. And who's going to pick up the slack? And balance is really an interesting term that I think kind of oversimplifies the discussion. Balance, I think of a teeter-totter, and you've got two people sitting on the end, and you want that teeter-totter to just be perfectly parallel to the ground. My life is not two things in weighing in the balance. It's lots of things. There's work, there's children, there's my wife, there's community and spirituality. There's a lot of things that if it's probably 15 plank teeter-totter, which makes the analogy too hard. And so I switched to the analogy of spinning plates. If you've been to the circus and seen someone holding a dowel and spinning a lot of plates on different dowels, some plates start spinning really well, and you kind of have to hit them once in a while with your left hand to keep them spinning. And other plates get wobbly, and you've got to use both hands on them real quick for a time to get them back in equilibrium. And Courtney and I, executives that I've worked with and we understand what plates we have going together. And sometimes I've had to say, Courtney, I'm not going to be able to spin the home plate right now. I'm working on a big deal at work that's going to take everything I've got. Can you use both your hands to spin yours and some of my plates for a time? And then I'd work the work plate. There's been other times where there's been crises at home where I go to colleagues at work and I say, I need you to help spin my work plates for me as I put two hands on a home plate. And so I think if you're trying to achieve that kind of balance where you're keeping everything in equilibrium, you have to be on the same page with those that are in your ecosystem, your spouse, your kids, those you work with. Now, I'm not going to comment on Elon Musk's ecosystem or LeBron James' ecosystem, but I suspect that those that are in there help them do what they do to become what they've become.
Obviously supportive. You got to have a huge support network around you in order to do something like that, where you're just like, I'm dedicating my life to this one thing.
Yeah.
Still love you. I'm dedicating my whole life to this whole thing.
And they have to be bought in on it. And if they're not bought in on it, then, there has to be an escape hatch. Or you have to say, that part, I can't have you escape hatch out of my life. We'll make a choice. And so, there was a time early in my career, I was practicing law for a big international firm, and my then 6-year-old son came to me on Sunday night and he said, Dad, I'll see you next Sunday. And I wasn't traveling. I just always left every morning before he got up, and I always came home every night after he went to bed. And boy, that statement was a dagger to my heart. And so, after he went to bed, I sat down with Courtney in our bedroom. I said, there's got to be a change. And she agreed. And so that's when we started looking for what was next. And that's what brought us to Utah and joined a small startup company in 1999 that was software company that was about to go public, kind of early Silicon Slopes action. And, Did I still work hard and sometimes too hard? Yes. But there was I can't have that piece of my ecosystem break
Yeah.
decision.
Yeah, that's a tough. See you next Sunday. That's a tough thing to swallow.
Yeah. I like your analogy, though, of the plates. It's a good one. It's better
Thanks.
than the teeter-totter. You want me to give my opinion on what you just said about LeBron, or should we save that for another day?
Oh, Derek, I'd love to hear it.
Let's hear what you got to say, dude.
I got to wake up, eat a curated, perfectly manicured meal, go exercise, and play a game that 99.99999% of the people that play are kids on planet Earth. Check his Instagram and all that other stuff to verify that that's even true. I guarantee he spends plenty of time with the family. And then he exercises and plays a game.
Well, if your point is he's very successful and it's probably easier than, some 19-year-old kid at UVU trying to be, yeah.
I'd be interested in J.J. Redick's opinion on that. But LeBron, he was born to probably be one of the top 5 best basketball players on planet Earth.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I appreciate his dedication. And one of the things that I've been watching that he does that I think he's on the front end of a wave that will come in America is his focus on sleep.
Oh, yeah.
And, there are athletes that are sleeping in hyperbaric chambers and getting better sleep. I think NBA athletes today are not like NBA athletes in Wilt's time, where you finish a game and, then you go out on the town. And I think there's a focus on sleep being part of good health, good physical health, good mental health. And I think sleep technology is going to help bring that to the masses, because I think a lot of us, and Garrett, we were talking about this a little bit before, and I know you're not a many hours a night sleeper, but I think a lot of us are tired.
Yeah.
Because we don't get real sleep, we don't get restful sleep. And I think whether it's things like the Oura Ring that are starting to help on that, or, heaven knows we've got a lot of mattress and pillow companies and
like the 8 Sleep
in Utah in our community. But I think that that's something that helps bring balance to life. If you're more rested and you can think better and perform better.
Yeah.
So that's one of the areas that interests me, and one of the things I'm looking at as I try to decide what's next for me.
I love it.
Yeah, sleep is so critical, and we're learning that more and more. And I like your point there. He really probably didn't bring it more to the public consciousness than anybody else, just because of his stature and who he is, just like the importance of sleep and all that type of stuff. What's fascinating to me about him is just his longevity. To be that great that long is just
Well, I don't
insane.
know if, there was a time maybe 15 years ago where I was trying to do the LeBron workout when I'd go to 24-hour fitness. That is a brutal workout. I mean, what he does is beast mode.
Yeah. I mean, you got to be kind of a maniac to be like a Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or LeBron James. Like, again, you've got to be so focused and all that type of stuff. Anyways, I want to talk to you about Utah. And you said in 1999 you came here, Overstock was just about to go public. What's the difference between now and 1999 in Utah?
Well, it's interesting. When I moved here in 99, I joined a company called Tenfold. That was the one that was just about to go public.
Oh, okay.
And that was in Draper. I joined Overstock 3 years later. But if you told me when I was a freshman at BYU that one day I would work in Draper, I would have guessed I was doing one of three things. I was pumping gas, I was a farmer, or I was working at the prison.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'd be in the prison, but I hope that wasn't the case. But it's changed. It had begun to change. And, Tenfold was an early kind of plant tech company there. Silicon Slopes didn't exist.
Yep.
I mean, it just wasn't even a thing. And you could still drive from Salt Lake to Provo. And, there were more homes than there were in 1984 when I was a freshman at BYU. But it was still a lot of open land. And, today, and it meant recruiting people to Utah to work at your company was a little bit hard, because if it didn't work out for them or for the company, they were probably relocating again. They'd
Yeah.
relocated here and they would relocate away from here. Today, that's not the case. Today, there's so many companies here that recruiting to Utah has become a lot easier. It's become a much more diverse community. But I think one of the things it hasn't lost is its collaborative nature. And I think that's a large part because of what Silicon Slopes all the companies are and what Silicon Slopes, the organization, Clint, that you and Garrett have helped build. It's a little more communal than the normal dog-eat-dog world of capitalism.
Yeah, it's a rare thing to have the top leaders and CEOs of an ecosystem getting in a room and say, how do we grow the ecosystem, rather than how do we not being in a room and how do we take that person down or go, recruit. And I mean, you're still competing for talent and all that type of stuff, but that is a really fascinating part of Utah. Who do you think we have to thank for that? I was on a panel with Governor Leavitt recently and Natalie Gochner, and what Leavitt did trying to go, this is a political perspective. I think who we have to thank really is the entrepreneurs who built the companies and all that type of stuff. But from a political perspective, like Mike Leavitt probably doesn't get enough credit for what he did going to Silicon Valley, recruiting companies here, recruiting talent here. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first and foremost, it's got to go to the entrepreneurs. And I think the early entrepreneurs, when, you think of WordPerfect, and, WordPerfect ultimately was purchased and didn't become the dominant software package, but it had a dandelion effect of all the people that were WordPerfect alum that then became founders or workers at other companies that then, in the alumni of different companies that have
Novell too.
Novell, right? Novell ultimately purchased WordPerfect, and that was another one. So I think there was some really great early founders that helped us. I'm really eager to read Mike Leavitt's memoirs. I heard 4 volumes have come out. That's a little much for me.
Yeah, that's why I was there.
But
I'm
I'm eager to read those. I think what he did to create kind of a state VC for a time, which I'm generally against, just from my own political perspective.
Same.
Governments, getting too involved in the private sector. But that was probably a good seed fund to get more companies started. And now it's not necessary. We've got lots of VC and PE firms here in Utah that step in and do all that. But Governor Leavitt was kind of cutting edge on that. He was also, very involved early with what does the internet mean for commerce. I didn't always agree with some of the tact he was taking on, for example, how internet companies should collect and pay sales tax. But he was thoughtful, and I think he saw around some of the tech corners that most politicians didn't even know there was going to be a turn on the street.
Yeah, in that discussion I was in, he said that he was the first governor to send an email, or second. Like they were like the first governor's office to even set up email, and I think they even used Novell, which may have been a mistake.
Well, that's funny. My first job out of law school was working for state government. I was a clerk at the Utah Supreme Court, and the word processing system that we used was not Word, which is what our WordPerfect, which I was used to using in college. It took about 6 lines of text, and then beyond that, you couldn't go back and edit. It was a long time ago. And so, that was a little bit pre-Governor Leavitt. So it wouldn't surprise me if he was cutting edge on sending one of the first emails.
Yeah. What do you think, where do you think we're at now as a state, as a community? You said hey, we've got all these incredible companies, and we could name them, and the incredible entrepreneurs who've been spawned from the early days of Alan Ashton and Ed Bastian and all these incredible legends. And And by the way, like the CEO of Novell left to be the CEO of Google.
Yeah, for sure,
That's
right?
That's pretty fascinating.
That's some serious alumni,
Yeah.
right? You look at
Kinda
that
crazy.
coaching tree. If that was, part of the coaching tree from Ray Norda, then look at the coaching tree that comes from Eric Schmidt out of
Yeah.
Google. I mean, that's a significant group of people.
Did you ever meet Ray Norda?
I didn't.
Me neither. Yeah, but we don't give him enough credit. It seems like what he did is incredible.
Yeah,
Him and
for
Alan
sure.
Ashton and Ed Bastian and those folks. But where do you think we're at now? Like both from a state leadership perspective, but also just like as a community and ecosystem, all that.
It feels to me like there's a little bit of a pause in our progress forward. With Garrett, before we sat down in front of the mics, we were talking, who's the exciting new company right now? It feels like we're a little paused. There's not many that jump out to me. I'm involved with one that you interviewed last week, Bloom, that's helping outsource work, and working with BYU Pathway. I think that's pretty exciting. But it feels to me like we're kind of in a little bit of chop wood, carry water period, rather than what's the next big great idea. That's a little bit of a pessimistic read on it, but that's what I feel right now.
I think there's a lot of truth to that. If you think about, we were really good and probably made our mark and our reputation as Silicon Slopes from 2010 to 2020 at software as a service, maybe before that, but we had a great decade and we were great at software as a service, maybe the best at it outside of Silicon Valley, right? And now it does seem like software as a service, that model might be going away. I'm not positive about that, but that model might be going away due to AI. And you're right about us not building like really highly technical, deep companies. We're really good at the SaaS model, which is great. And like if that continues, that's great. But I would just wonder, like, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Like, what's coming next?
And I think part of that's a funding issue. We talked about the economy earlier, and when interest rates are high, funding is harder to get. And so I think the economy factors into this. I don't think that the ideas have dried up, but I think some of the funding for kind of big bet ideas may be harder to get.
What about politically, not to get you in trouble or have you speak if you don't want to, but I mean, how do you think we're doing on political leadership front?
I'm not as involved in state politics as I was before.
Hey, I have a new job for you.
Yeah.
Do that.
No, thank you. My lovely wife, Courtney, says I can run for office again anytime I want, but it will need to be with another wife. And I got no interest in that. So, I'll tell you one thing I do think, in the legislative session ended recently, we passed too many laws. When it's 600 laws in 45 days, that's in the teens a day. That's too many laws.
Yeah.
They're not reading them.
Well, they're not reading them. And
They're not writing them.
We don't need that many laws. I mean, I used to joke, even the greatest lawgiver of all time could only come up with 10 on his best day.
Yeah.
I think we have too much government involvement. I've always thought that, but I'm hard for me to comment because I'm not intimately involved in kind of states' workings these days.
Yeah.
600. My goodness.
So many.
You got to take, 1,800 off if you're going to do 600.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy.
Right?
Yeah.
So what's next for you? You don't know yet?
I don't know yet. I think I'll know when I see it. I'm looking at a lot of different things, and it could be running another company. But I'm just as excited about finding some. I'm going to sound like an old man now, yelling at clouds. But finding some young entrepreneur who wants someone who's a little seasoned to help him or her execute. I've grabbed the brass ring. How can I lift someone else so that they can grab the brass ring? That excites me too. I'm just looking for the right product, industry to get involved in. And the good news is, I don't feel like I need to swing at a bad pitch.
That's the
Yeah.
spirit.
Speaking of pitches and swinging, I'm really excited about baseball starting again.
Opening day.
Opening day.
You're a big
2 days
Dodgers
away.
guy, right?
I'm a huge Dodgers fan, and I'm really excited about Big League Utah.
Yeah.
I would love to see Major League Baseball land in our great state.
What do
I
you
would
think
love
the
to see-
odds are of that? It feels like it's gaining momentum, and the odds are pretty good.
Yeah, it feels to me like if they're going to add 2 teams, and they're going to add one west of the Mississippi and one east of the Mississippi, that we ought to be the one west. We've got a pretty good media market. We've got good potential owners
Mm-hmm.
that have owned major league franchises before. We got
Baseball fans, you got
fans.
3.
We got fans that are bananas
Yeah.
for football,
look
for
at how we
basketball,
showed up
why
for
not
March
baseball?
Madness. Like
Yeah,
the first 2 rounds of March Madness, Salt Lake City was the most packed of all of the locations. Like we're sports fans in
Yeah.
the state of Utah for sure.
and
Yeah.
one reason I like baseball is I think it's really a family game. I grew up going to Dodger Stadium. I've been to hundreds of Dodger games. And I love taking my kids there when they were growing up. That would be one of our things. You finish your summer reading, we're going on a road trip to see a Dodger game. And we could go to Chavez Ravine and feel comfortable no matter where we sat. And we could go to AT&T Park in San Francisco and wear our Dodger blue and still feel comfortable. It's a great family sport, and it has a pace that I think is nice in today's super fast.
Well, as a dad, you get to sit there and you get to talk to your kids
Yeah.
and you have conversations. It's really like an outdoor bar. You don't have to drink. Right? I mean,
Yeah.
of course you can.
you
but
get your
it's
hot
really
dogs
like-
and peanuts.
Yeah,
right?
it's really like that, where you're just like, you're just chilling and talking. And occasionally you're looking like somebody did something cool. You're like, wow.
yeah.
Amazing.
So I think the steps for getting it are probably first they got to, solve what happens with the A's and the Rays, and I think that's pretty close. Then they've got a collective bargaining agreement with the players. That's probably going to be tough. And then I think the owners probably get down to brass tacks and figure out, okay, where are our 2 new franchises? And I hope one of them is
Yeah.
right here in Utah. That'd be awesome.
It does seem like Nashville's definitely getting one before us. Nashville, I think, is next. And then
Feels like they're probably the same time.
maybe about the same time. The one interesting thing is the A's. I don't know if you've been following this.
Mm.
Their ownership missed some payments on that stadium down there, which Vegas is now rumors like A's might be coming to Utah. I don't know what the odds of that are. I imagine slim to none. And by the way, I think the A's might play here for a season, which is kind of crazy.
I wouldn't put my chips on either of those things right now. I mean, it'd be great.
Yeah.
I would love it. And by the way, I like the A's.
I like the A's too.
Overstock used to have our name on. It was the O.Co Coliseum that the A's played in
That's
Oakland.
right.
So I've actually thrown out a first pitch at an A's game, which was kind of a highlight.
Did
That's
you
a
wear your
big deal.
Dodger blue?
I had some Dodger socks on under my long pants. But I was wearing my A's cap. Of course I was wearing my A's stuff.
You throw a strike?
If you had generous ump, he'd have called it low and away outside. Strike.
Gotcha.
But the best thing about it, there are 2 videos, Garrett, of that day. There's the official video that shows me throwing it, from the catcher's perspective. But there's the video that my college roommate who lives up in the Bay Area took, who was standing behind my sons. And before I went out to the mound, they kept saying, "Don't miss it, Dad. Don't miss it, Dad. Don't miss it, Dad."
Yeah.
And when it hit the catcher's mitt, their arms went up. All 5 of them. Yes. That's my favorite video because I did not disappoint.
Yeah. Well, that's like the fun, good pressure, right? Where you
Yes,
feel
yes.
alive and
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
good for you. Like when W threw that pitch after 9/11 and just laced it right
Oh
down the
my
middle.
gosh.
Yeah.
That was
Like, wow, let's go. That was the crazy.
credit
That's
where
the
credit is
craziest
due.
pitch
Yeah.
ever. That was so cool. We are getting an NHL team. It seems like that's going to happen. What do you think about that? Are you a big hockey fan?
I'm not much of a hockey fan. I've been to a few professional games. I think it'd be great if they come. I'll go to a few games a year. I think hockey's a lot better in person.
Yep.
You can follow the puck on the ice a lot better than you can on a TV screen. and it's fast, but it's not quite as fast as it is on TV. So I think live hockey's pretty fun.
Yeah, I agree.
Amazing.
Thanks for coming in, my friend.
Oh, Clint, Garrett, thanks for having me. This is
Thank
awesome.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Come back anytime.
Next time we'll just talk about baseball. Next time you're here.
I'm ready, and hopefully there's no betting scandals to talk about.
Yeah, we got to worry about Ohtani now, huh?
Dodger fan alert. I hope that poor guy doesn't get screwed in that.